You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
Biden-Harris 2020 is now official. In the early hours of Wednesday, 12th August, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden announced California Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate for the upcoming US presidential elections on 3rd November. Kamala who? Why does this name ring a bell? 55-year-old Kamala Harris was born in California to an Indian mother, Shyamala Gopalan, a breast cancer scientist, and a Jamaican father who taught at Stanford University. Among the rising stars in the Democratic Party, she had announced in January 2019 that she was running for president. After a year-long spirited fight against heavyweights Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, she dropped out in December. However, since stepping down, Harris has been a vocal supporter of Biden's bid for nomination as the Democratic candidate and has been a prominent advocate of racial justice legislation after the death of George Floyd in late May. There is no denying that Harris's selection is symbolically loaded for a country torn by racial injustice and the pandemic. But what message exactly does a nomination send out? What are the political and electoral implications of picking a woman of color? Can she take on Trump? And will she be able to swing the Indian American vote? You're tuned into The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you, and I'm your host, Sushovan. Kamala Harris has been a trailblazer in several aspects. A pragmatic moderate, and she will be the first black woman and the first person of Indian descent to be nominated for national office by a major party. Harris, who made her name as a tough prosecutor, is the first Indian American woman to become a senator, the first Indian American woman to become a San Francisco district attorney, and the first Indian American woman to become California's attorney general. To help us better navigate the nuances of Kamala Harris as a potential vice president of the United States and answer our questions, I'm joined today by international affairs expert Harsh V. Pant, who heads the Strategic Studies program at Observer Research Foundation. First of all, how does one interpret the message and symbolism of picking someone like Harris?
Two things is particularly important as far as the Biden camp was concerned. One was this idea that we need to bring people together in some ways and make a case that to especially to the African Americans about how significant given and their significance in the Democratic base. It was important, of course, to choose a candidate who ticks those boxes. But also, I think in some ways, Kamala Harris brings a sort of youth dynamism to a ticket, whose basic vulnerability at the moment is that Mr. Biden is very old, and while anti-Trump, the constituency is coalescing around him, he's still not generating enough enthusiasm, and I think that enthusiasm perhaps is something that Kamala Harris brings to the table, at least initial enthusiasm. There's going to be a lot of excitement around the choice. It's a historic choice, first female African American and of Indian American, if you will, descent on the big ticket. So I think a lot of those factors were coalescing to make a case for Harris. But certainly, it's in some ways it's a historic choice, and Mr. Biden is has generated some amount of discussion and debate in a space which I think Mr. Trump was carrying every day.
However, given Harris's Indian lineage, her selection and subsequent campaign is bound to generate enormous buzz in India and perhaps among the Indian American community as well. It is important, however, to also take into account that she has traditionally underplayed her Indianness, but has spoken about her mother and family at length during her campaign. Therefore, let's break down the India question in two parts. First, what does her nomination mean for the 1.5 million Indian American voters? And second, What would Vice President Kamala Harris mean for Indo-US relations?
She has, I mean, it's a fact that she has underplayed her Indian descent. She, I think, compared to some others, like Tulsi Gabbard, for example, she's not the one who has who has made a big deal about her being from India. She speaks occasionally, very rarely about it, and I think given the state of Indo-US relations at the moment, I think the Indo-US relations are being driven more by some of the fundamental realities of the relationship rather than by personalities. Of course, Mr. Modi has invested a lot, both with Mr. Obama and with Mr. Trump. And as you mentioned, with Mr. Trump, he has sort of gone all out. Now, whether or not that that pays India the dividends remains to be seen. But clearly, that has allowed India to get out of some of the worst instincts of Mr. Trump. So Mr. Modi has been successful in placating Trump in some ways. I mean, these are very difficult years for all of Mr. Trump's, all of America's partners and allies. And if you compare India, I think India has come off relatively well. So the question, therefore, is where does Indian Americans stand, and what do they feel about Kamala Harris? And as I said, I think it's going to be very, very divided. Some of Indian Americans would, of course, be enthused by the fact that you have an Indian American for the first time so close to being has been nominated historic first, and again getting so close to being the Vice President of America, and eventually, hopefully, who knows, the President. But I think the others you'd find would be a bit uncomfortable, because Mr. Trump has been relatively good for India on big ticket items, for example, on Pakistan and China. He's been relatively good, and also the fact that you have a situation where Ms. Harris has also spoken out against India's revocation of Article 370. There have been, she has been quoted as saying certain things that might not be very palatable to New Delhi. So there are going to be, I think, enough people to think and to dissect Ms. Harris's record on India as these go by. But my broader sense here is that irrespective of who comes to office, Indo-US relations are only likely to get stronger.
In picking Harris as his running mate, Biden fulfilled his pledge of selecting a woman as his partner for the upcoming elections. The former vice president, who is set to face off against President Donald Trump, described Harris as a fearless fighter and one of the country's finest public servants in a tweet announcing her as his running mate. She brings to the race a far more vigorous campaign style than Mr. Biden's, and her oratory skills will be tested in a bitter battle against a caustic Trump. The important question here is, can she help swing votes in favor of Biden and have what it takes to defeat a Donald Trump?
To a certain extent, yes. I think that must have been at the back of their minds, certainly. But I think Kamala Harris's electoral track record is also a bit complicated. So I don't think she herself is able to generate that kind of, or would be able to generate that kind of a momentum for Mr. Biden. Now, at the moment, what is happening is Mr. Biden is leading, or seems to be stronger because the anti-Trump forces have coalesced around him. But there is no bounce in the ticket. There is no, great enthusiasm for him per se. I think Ms. Harris brings that enthusiasm, the energy of youth with her, the kind of oratory skills that you talk about, and perhaps will be able to generate some of that. But whether electorally she would benefit Mr. Biden remains to be seen, because I don't remember her previous track record being that great in terms of electoral maneuvering. A lot of the big things, for example, where her presidential candidacy also fizzled out, was also related to this idea that she did not have a big picture vision of where what her presidency would look like. So whether she can generate that kind of electoral momentum, I'm not so sure. But certainly, I think perception-wise, she would bring in some good press for Mr. Biden, some good headlines for him, some very needed headlines for him because, whether good or bad, Mr. Trump has an ability to suck the energy out of the media. But I think certainly the historical nature of her nomination is something that will excite a lot of people, that will allow a lot of people to relook at Biden's presidency, even Indian Americans, and perhaps that might give Mr. Biden some momentum.
If you like listening to this podcast, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out our podcast section. For any feedback, send an email to podcasts@thequint.com.